So a very good evening to all meditators, especially the newcomers. So before I give the instructions how to practice mindfulness meditation, I shall quote briefly from one of the teachings of the Buddha, or one of the discourses of the Buddha. Before Mahaparinibbana of Buddha, the Buddha said to Venerable Ananda, Ananda, dwell with yourselves as your own island, with yourself as your own refuge, with no other refuge. Dwell with the Dharma as your island, with the Dharma as your refuge, with no other refuge. And how, Ananda, does a bhikkhu dwell himself as his own island, with himself as his own refuge, with no other refuge, with the Dharma as his island, with the Dharma as its refuge, with no other refuge. Here Ananda, a bhikkhu contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, or having removed covetousness and displeasures in regard to the world. He dwells contemplating feeling in feeling, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasures in regard to the world. Dwell contemplating mind in mind, ardent, or clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasures in regard to the world. Dwells contemplating Dharma in Dharma, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasures in regard to the world. So this teaching of Buddha is very meaningful. We do not seek refuge outside us. We can find our refuge in the mind by the practice of the four foundations of mindfulness. In brief, is known as mindfulness meditation. You may understand better and better when you take up the practice of mindfulness meditation, and when you keep on listening and studying the scriptures, then you may understand the significance of refuge in the teachings of Buddha. Mindfulness meditation is the life of the teachings of Buddha. It is the essence of the teachings. You cannot find this practice of mindfulness meditation outside the Buddha Sasana or the teachings of the Buddha. So it's important that you have to practice the four foundations of mindfulness in order to attain the refuge, in order to find your refuge. So I shall not discuss about this course further, but I shall explain the practice. The practice is much important than the theory. The purpose of mindfulness meditation is to realize the mental and physical phenomena in their true natures. The word mindfulness is translated from the Pali word sati. So sati is translated of mindfulness. It also means awareness, or to observe or to watch your own mind or body. Whatever phenomenon is arising in the mind and body can be taken as objects of mindfulness meditation. So whatever object is arising in the mind or in the body at that present moment can be taken as an object of mindfulness meditation. The purpose of mindfulness meditation is to realize the true nature of mental and physical phenomena through personal experience or direct experience. We can only be mindful of an object or phenomenon that's arising at that present moment. We cannot be mindful of something that had happened and passed away in the past. We cannot be mindful of something that's not yet arisen. We can only be mindful of something that's arising at that present moment in our mind or in our body. So in other words, we have to be mindful of one object or one thing at each present moment. There are many phenomena or objects of mindfulness meditation. For example, thinking or planning or emotional feeling or mental defilements such as anger or hatred, aversion, craving, restlessness, and so on. So whatever object is arising in the mind should be taken as an object of meditation at that time. Then physical phenomena consists mainly the four material elements. The four material elements are wind element, earth element, fire element, and water elements. We can experience these elements in our body. What we meant about, what we talk about wind elements, it's not the wind or the air that you can perceive like blowing and touching your body. What we meant here is the movements or motion or vibration or the nature support. So this nature is known as this nature of movements, motions, vibrations, and the nature support is known as the specific characteristics of the wind element. So we can experience these movements in our body, especially during walking or when we are doing something in our daily life. We can also experience hardness and softness in our body. So this nature of hardness and softness is known as earth element in the practice of mindfulness meditation. We can also experience hot, cold, or different degree of temperatures in our body. So this nature is known as the specific characteristics of the fire element. And the water element has its own characteristic, there's cohesion or fluidity. So we have to be mindful of one of the elements at each moment. So there are many phenomena to be mindful of. We can practice mindfulness in all the four postures, walking, standing, sitting, and reclining. But in the formal practice, we seldom use the or the reclining postures or lying meditations. If the effort is not enough, it's not easy to practice lying meditation. One who doesn't have strong effort in practicing lying meditation, he or she may fall into sleepiness quite easily. So in the formal practice, we learn to develop mindfulness during walking, standing, and sitting. And when you gain more and more experiences and becoming more skillful in the practice, you shall be able to bring mindfulness into your daily life while you are doing something. So the Buddha always said, mindfulness is helpful everywhere. Mindfulness is needed all the time. So you need to sharpen your mindfulness. You need to train your mind on mindfulness so that eventually you can apply it in your daily life. When you have mindfulness, then you can guard your mind or guard your thoughts, your speech, and your actions. Mindfulness is one of the wholesome mental states. It's known as Sobhana Cetasika, one of the beautiful mental states. So when you have mindfulness, defilements cannot arise in your mind. When you have mindfulness, you could abstain from unwholesome speech. When you have mindfulness, you can restrain yourself from committing evil bodily actions. So mindfulness is the chief of all the wholesome mental states, all kinds of wholesome actions. So new meditators may begin to learn this, to learn to practice mindfulness meditation, starting from walking and sitting. Similarly, those who are experienced in mindfulness meditation should practice daily, at least half an hour, at least 1 hour a day if possible, whereby they can practice walking meditation between 20 to 30 minutes. Then they will practice sitting meditation for the rest of the time. If they have longer hours to practice, for example 2 hours, then they may practice walking meditation for about 1 hour and sitting meditation for 1 hour. So the duration of the practice depending on the availability of the times. So now I shall explain how to practice walking meditation. Every sitting meditation should be preceded by walking meditation. Walking meditation is very helpful to the practice of sitting. So ideally, every time meditators should begin with a walking meditation. So meditators may choose a walking path. You choose a walking path, or maybe I can come down and do the demonstrations for new meditators. So meditators need to choose a walking path. The walking path should not be too long nor too short. The shortest walking path is about 10 steps. The longest about 20 steps. So it's better you fix your length of walking path so that you can walk up and down smoothly. So during walking meditation, meditators keep the postures upright, but they should not look too far nor too near. Maybe look in front on the floor about 5 or 6 feet. If meditators look far away, they will see many visible objects, and all these visible objects cause distractions to the mindfulness. So we suggest meditators restrain their eyes. In other words, they do not have to look too far nor too near. Just look naturally on the floor about 5 or 6 feet ahead. And during the walking, if meditators, if possible, lock their hands. Lock their hand means hold their hands together, place it in front, or place it at the back, or hold the other arms. The reasons of locking the hands is to minimize unnecessary movements. As you know, some people like to swim their arms as they walk, so that will cause distraction to mindfulness. So during mindfulness meditation, we may suggest to meditators to lock their hands. So keeping the postures upright. So meditators always mindful means pay attention to whatever happening at that present moment. So at this present moment, I'm standing, so I should be mindful of standing. So I be mindful means I become aware that I'm standing. At the beginning of the practice, the awareness or mindfulness is quite weak. So we introduce a technique known as a mental labeling or mental noting. So we take note mentally. In other words, mentally say it: standing, 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 standing. So meditators should be aware of the standing postures. Should not pay attention to that mental noting. Mental noting is to help you to be more attentive or paying attention to the objects that you are noting at the time. When you are mindful of the standing postures, you should not visualize the postures in your mind. In mindfulness meditation, we never use any visualizations in the practice. We learn to sense the object through direct experience. So when I turn my attention to the postures, I know it immediately. I do not have to think even for a second. I know that I'm standing, so mentally know that standing, 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 standing. You may know it about 5 times, 6 times, or even nearly 10 times, but you should not count. In mindfulness meditation does not involve any counting. Counting is not the way to develop mindfulness. So be mindful and note the standing postures more than 5 times. Then meditators may begin to walk right or left. So the stepping is not too long nor too short. It's about the length of your foot. In between, there's some space. Right, slowly, perceiving the actual movements of the foot. So during walking meditation, we do not have to be mindful of the body movements or shifting of the weights. We try our best to perceive the movements of foot. We do not have to be mindful of the bending of the knee. As I'm mindful of the movements of the right foot, if my mindfulness is not strong enough, I do sense other things, for the pressing of the front foot and so on. So meditators just be mindful of the movements of foot. They do not have to pay attention to so many things. If meditators pay attention or be mindful of many things, the mindfulness cannot be developed or getting stronger. So be mindful of one thing. As we walk, so we mindful of movements of foot, left. So meditators perceive the movements and mentally know it. As they make the mental noting, they should make sure that the mindfulness stay with the movements. So left. So perceive the movements, then make the mental noting, or keep the mindfulness with the movements until the movements stop When meditators reach the end of the walking path, they should stop, but they should not mindful and not stopping. Or they do not have to mindful and not stopping. Once they have stopped, they mindful and not standing, 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 about 5 or 6 times, or even about nearly 10 times. Then they have to turn back, turning, turning. At the beginning of practice, they could not turn very slowly. They may realize that the body is turning, the leg is also moving at the same time. So we cannot mindful of two, 3 things at the same movement. So in this case, sometimes we suggest meditators can mindful of the turning movement of the body and not turning, turning, standing, 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 or right, left, slowly. So every meditator has to slow down, but they slow down in accordance with their ability. You do not force yourself to slow down too much. You slow down and you feel that pace, that slow pace is comfortable. You are able to mindful of the movements well. When you are able to practice daily or join intensive retreats, then you may be able to walk slower and slower day by day. We are not, our main point is to develop mindfulness. But in order to develop mindfulness, we need to slow down our actions and movements. If we do everything quickly, we could not mindful of the rapid actions or rapid process of movements well. So we need to slow down in order to develop mindfulness. So walking slowly and note the movements as it is. As you walk, sometimes you realize that the mindfulness is wandering away from the object. For example, sometimes the mind is thinking of something. Once you realize the mind is thinking of something, you should stop immediately. For example, as you mindful of the movements of right, then you realize that you are thinking of something, then you should stop and note thinking. Once the thinking has disappeared, you move again, right, left, slowly. So during the meditation, we learn to be indifferent to the sense object as much as possible. Because the sense object is a distraction. So we learn to be indifferent, not paying much attention to it. But sometimes the sound or the noise or the voice is distracting. You could not mindful of the movements of the foot. Your mind has gone to the sound or the noise. Then you may have to stop walking and note it as hearing. You may note about 2-3 times hearing. Then if the sound or the noise doesn't stop, you just ignore it. It's not possible to note hearing all the time if the sound is very persisting. Sound is an external object. In mindfulness meditation, the object is internal, not external. It's because we want to gain direct experience of the true natures of the phenomena or the objects. We cannot gain the direct experience of personal experience when the objects come into contact with our body or with our mind. If the object is happening outside you, it's not possible to gain direct experience or personal experience. So the objects of mindfulness meditation are always internal, not external. So you continue to walk again, right, left. When you walk back to the other end, then you stop and be mindful of standing again. Standing, 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 standing. Then you mindful turning again, turning, or turning, or turning, or turning, or standing, 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 standing. Then you begin to walk again. If meditators have half an hour to practice walking, or an hour to practice walking meditation, then they should divide the times into two parts. For about 15 minutes, they mindful the movements of the foot as left and right. Then, for the next 15 minutes, if meditators only have half an hour to practice walking meditation, or about 45 minutes if they have 1 hour to practice walking meditation. So for the second periods, they should slow down their movements so that they can mindful of the walkings in more details. So usually we introduce to the new beginners or newcomers in mindfulness meditation up to 3 phases of steps. At the beginning of the walking meditation, they may mindful of the steps as left and right. About 15 minutes later, they have to walk slower and be mindful of the 3 phases of steps, or in other words, 3 processes of movements. The 3 processes of movement are lifting. So lift out the foot slowly, pushing and dropping, or lifting, pushing, dropping. So in other words, meditators drop the foot down flatly, lifting, pushing, dropping, or lifting, pushing, dropping. If meditators are not able to walk slower, they may not able to perceive these movements as 3 different processes of movements. But when they keep on practicing, they are able to see clearly. Lifting process is a process by itself. Pushing process is another process. Dropping is another process. So your stepping should not be too long. If your stepping is quite long, most likely the heel touches the floor first. This is not good. The walking is not stable. If the stepping is too short, it seems also not natural. Sometimes some meditators walk with very short steps. This seems like not natural. So in the walking meditation, we suggest the steps is not too long nor too short. So mindful and no lifting, pushing, dropping until the end of that sessions of walking meditation, lifting, pushing, dropping, lifting, pushing, dropping. So it's important to perceive that there's lifting process and know it. When there's a pushing process, be mindful and know it. When it's a dropping process, be mindful and know it. So it's important to follow the technique of mindfulness well. If meditators did not follow the technique of mindfulness meditation correctly, they may not be able to realize the true nature of the mindfulness. Mindfulness is also one of the mental states. As you know, the mind and all the mental states are not permanent. That mental state of mindfulness also is not permanent. But when your mindfulness and concentration are not strong enough, you may not be able to realize the arising and passing way of the mindfulness clearly. But when you keep on practicing, following the technique of mindfulness meditation correctly, you realize that the object and the mindfulness are not permanent. both subject to arising and passing away. So it's important that you realize that there's a lifting movements, be mindful, no eat. When you realize there's process pushing, be mindful, no eat. When you realize there's dropping, be mindful and no eat. So as you're mindful, lifting, pushing, dropping, if the mind is wandering or thinking, you have to stop at that time. You do not have to complete that steps, then only mindful and note the thinking. For example, as you're mindful of pushing, then you realize there's thinking, so you complete the step, and then you want to note the thinking. Actually, that thinking could have disappear. So as you're mindful of the step, when you know there's thinking, you stop where you are, if possible. Like for example, as my mindful pushing, if there's a thinking, I stop and note thinking. But if meditators could not stand well on one leg, they may put down the other legs. But as they put down, they should be mindful of thinking mind. Because mindful of thinking or other mental states that are arising during mindfulness meditation is important. And in fact, it's a most important factor to make progress. It's because meditation is also known as mental training or mental culture, mental development. So we always emphasize on mindfulness of mental states. But if there's no mental state arising, they should be very mindful of the physical phenomena or body sensation, whichever is more dominant. So during walking meditation, we can say movements of the foot, standing, turning, are the basic object of walking meditation. So when the mind is thinking of something, meditators to stop immediately and be mindful of the thinking. Note it until that thinking has disappeared by itself, then they start to walk again. So lifting, pushing, dropping, and so on. At the end of walking meditation, it's important that meditators carry forward that mindfulness and concentration into the sitting. So constant and continuous mindfulness is another important factor to make progress. So at the end of walking meditation, meditators do not walk unmindfully. If possible, they maintain the same pace of walking, lifting, pushing, dropping, lifting, pushing, dropping. If there's another object arising in the body and is quite strong, meditators may have to be mindful of that object. For example, meditators feel an itch quite strong, then they should stop, be mindful of the sensation and notice itching. But sometimes there's a strong desire arising to scratch it. Meditators also should note the desire. In other words, meditators have to learn to restrain, not to react immediately, not to scratch the sensation immediately if possible. If they are able to develop patience and be mindful and note that sensation, the itchy sensation well, they may realize that the mindfulness will be getting stronger and they themselves also getting more patience. So patience is important in mindfulness meditation. If you practice well, you may find yourself getting more patience. So meditator notes the desire. Desire disappear if the sensation of itch is still there. You note it again, if possible. Note it until the sensation is getting weaker or disappear. So when the mindfulness and concentration are not developed, meditators may have to note certain objects or phenomena many times. So they need to be patient. Sometimes we allow beginners to scratch the sensation, but not frequently. Sometimes they feel the sensation so strong, is unbearable, they have strong desire to scratch it, then they should do it slowly, mindfully. Or for example, be mindful of lifting the hand, lifting, perceiving the actual process movements, they are aware of touching, scratching. Once the sensation has gone, they put down the hand again, put down the hand slowly, putting down, touching, and so on. But when you are able to make more and more progress, you may not have to scratch it anymore, because you realize that sensation is not permanent, it's arising and passing away quickly and by itself. So it's important to walk slowly, mindfully to the place of sitting. So every meditators have to walk slowly, mindfully to the place of sitting, and sit down slowly, mindfully. Sit down slowly, mindfully. So when meditators reach the place of sitting, they should not sit down quickly. They should not sit down unmindfully. They should mindful, for example, note standing, at least 5 times or 6 times. Then when they want to unlock their hands, they should do it slowly. So whenever possible, meditators only do one thing at a time. When meditators want to unlock their hands, they should not move both hands together. In mindfulness meditation, you learn to do one thing at a time, especially when you have chance to join intensive retreats. So when meditators want to unlock their hands, they do it slowly, one by one, or be aware of the movements. Sometimes they just know it's moving. When they want to sit down, be mindful of the movements of sitting down or lowering of the body. As you practice more and more, the teachers may instruct you to perceive the intention or desire to do something. But at the beginning of the practice, meditators could not realize intention, then they do not have to make the mental noting of intending. They may sit down slowly, so be mindful of sitting down. So they should perceive of the movements. Movements of sitting down should be perceived, not the tightening of muscle. Sitting down. At the beginning, your mindfulness is not so clear. You may not be able to perceive the movements well, because the tightening of muscle or heaviness of the body seems more obvious. But when your mindfulness is getting well or precise, you could mindful the movements that you are doing at the time. When you sit down, there's movements. So you mindful this process movements of sitting down or lowering. When you kneel down, there's a touching, the touching of your knee with the cushion. Be mindful of touching as well. You may note it once or twice, touching. Then whatever actions, movements you want to do it slowly. Whenever you can make mental noting, you make the mental noting. Of course, in some retreats, meditators may pay homage to the Buddha. They also do it slowly, mindfully. So after paying homage to the Buddha, then they sit down, sit slowly, one by one, be aware of movements, crossing of the legs. So meditators have to choose postures, any postures that they feel comfortable. For example, some meditators may be able to sit with a crossed leg, or it's known as a full lotus postures or half lotus, or in Burmese way of sitting, placing both legs evenly on the cushions on the floor. So they may place another piece of cushions at the lower back. So So when they want to place their hands on the laps or on the knee, they should also do it slowly. So for example, be mindful lifting, or be mindful moving, pressing down, touching your knee, and so on. When meditators need to straighten out the body, be mindful straightening. Be mindful of closing the eyes, closing, and so on. Then they begin the sitting meditation. At the beginning of sitting meditation, mindfulness meditators could not realize or perceive any strong objects. Then they should not search for an object. Or for the beginners, they may not know how to begin the sitting meditation. So in this tradition of practice, we introduce or instruct meditators to begin with the physical phenomena. So just now I explained the physical phenomena in Pali is known as rupa. Rupa consists of 4 material elements. We cannot mindful of 4 material elements at the same moment. Usually, one of the elements becomes dominant. So one of the material elements is a wind element. Meditators could perceive this wind element quite frequently, especially during walking meditation, or when you're mindful of left, right, lifting, pushing, dropping. This is due to the manifestation of wind element. When you're mindful of that, you're standing. Standing is also due to manifestation of wind element. It's due to the characteristics of the nature of support. So during sitting meditation, meditators also need to begin from somewhere. So in this tradition of practice, we begin the mindfulness meditation by being mindful of material elements. And one of the material elements is quite obvious, is the movements of abdomens. As long as we are alive, we have breath, the abdomen will move by itself. In other words, move outwards or expand outwards, then move inward again. So this movement of abdomens is an object to help meditators to begin the sitting meditation. So meditators should learn to sit with the mind and body relaxed. Similarly, during walking meditation, they learn to walk with the mind and body relaxed. But they should not purposely relax their mind and body. As long as you feel that you are quite normal, then you begin your meditations. So meditators direct the mindfulness to the abdomen and perceive the movements. At the beginning of practice, the movements of the abdomen is not clear. So we may allow the beginners or newcomers to place their palms above the abdomen. So when they want to do it, they should do it slowly, mindfully. So throughout the sitting meditation, meditators should not open their eyes. Even when they want to place the palms above the abdomen, they do not have to open their eyes. They keep their eyes closed, then they do it slowly, lifting, turning, moving. So they realize that the palm is moving towards the abdomen, moving. So the palm is placed above the abdomen. So when the palm is touching the abdomen, through this touching, meditators may be able to perceive the movements better, or it's easier to perceive the movements. But sometimes, by placing the palms above the abdomen, the meditators could not perceive the movements clearly. The movement is very weak. Then they should move the palm away slowly. moving, 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 turning, turning. Be mindful of placing down or touching, touching. So if the movement of abdomen is not clear, meditators have another alternative. Or the alternative is to mindful of the sitting postures. So at that present moment, meditators are sitting. So they mindful the postures and notice as sitting, sitting. They should not visualize the postures. They do not have to do what they call body scanning. They just be aware of the sitting postures with a bare awareness. They do not have to imagine or think of the postures. Sitting postures refer to the upper part body, or the upper part body remains upright or erect. So meditators may mindful and note the sitting postures twice, or sitting, sitting. Then in the next moment, if there's no other strong object, they should not search for an object. They may direct the mindfulness to the context or the touching of the body. You may find many contexts in your body. In this meditation, it's known as touching point. For example, my hand touches the knee, so this is known as touching. My right hand touches the other knee, there's a touching. My calf touching the cushions, or the foot touches the calf. Even touchings of your lips, touching of your shirts with the skins. So there are quite many touching points. But usually we suggest to meditators to choose 2 touching points that they are able to note it easily. Like for example, I suggest meditators may choose the touching of the hand with the knee. So that touching is quite clear. It's quite easy to feel it or perceive it. So they be mindful touching of the left hand with the knee and notice touching, touching. Then be mindful of the right hand touching the knee, touching, touching, sitting, sitting, touching, touching. So they alternate the sitting postures with two points of touching. So these are 3 objects. You can see 3 objects. Sitting postures is 1 object. The touching point of the right hand with the knee is another object. The touching of right hand with the knee is another object. So meditators alternate the sitting posture with 2 points of touching. As meditators are mindful of the sitting or touching, if the movement of the abdomen appear again, then you can mindful movements again. Just now, I was talking about placing the palms above the abdomen. So sometimes meditators be mindful of the placing of the palms above the abdomen. If by placing the palms above the abdomen, and they are able to note the movements clearer and clearer, they should move the hand away also. They should not rely on the touching of the hand with the abdomen. If they have to rely on the touching in order to note the movements, they may not be able to develop the strength of the mindfulness well. But we allow beginners or new meditators to place their palm on the abdomen occasionally, not throughout the sessions of the sitting. But when the beginners or newcomers are getting some experiences in the practice, they should not place their palms above the abdomen anymore. Even they cannot perceive the movement of abdomen, then they should take the alternative sitting postures and 2 points of touching as the basic object of meditation. So this movement of abdomen, sitting postures and 2 points of touching are known as the basic objects of sitting meditation. But some books on Vipassana meditation name these three objects as a primary objects. But it doesn't mean the most important object. Or they are the objects to help meditators to begin the sitting meditation. Or they are not the most important object. Some books on Vipassana meditation call this movement abdomen, sitting postures and touching points as the primary objects. But it doesn't mean the most important objects. So when meditators are mindful of movement abdomens or sitting postures or the touching point, then another stronger object arising. For example, meditators feel a strong pain arising on the legs. If meditators feel a little bit pain, they may not have to mindful and know it. But when the sensation of pain is getting stronger, in other words, the intensity of the pain is getting stronger, then it's not possible to ignore it. Then meditators to mindful and know pain, perceiving the painful sensation. Meditators should be patient with the pain. They should not move or adjust the sitting postures in order to relieve the pain. If meditators start to move or to adjust the postures or change the postures of sitting, whenever there's pain or any physical discomfort, then it could becomes a habit in the practice. But that habit is a bad habit. It's a hindrance to progress of mindfulness, concentration, and insight knowledge. So meditators need to be patient with pain, numbness, or any kinds of physical discomfort. If beginners or newcomers are not able to sit for 1 hour, they may sit for a shorter time, or maybe half an hour. Then they feel the pain or physical discomfort is unbearable. Then they may stop their sitting and get up slowly, mindfully, and practice walking meditation again if they have the time. But sometimes meditators realize that the posture is not upright, maybe due to lacking of effort or getting sleepy. The posture is drooping or slouching. Once the meditators realize the posture is not upright, they should straighten up the postures with mindfulness, straightening, sitting, touching, or the movement of abdomen is getting clearer, be mindful, know it again as rising, falling. So when meditators perceive the abdomen is expanding or moving outwards, they can know it as rising. When the rising process stops, the abdomen may move inwards again, or is contracting, then they know it's falling. Also rising, falling movements are the first basic object. If the movement of the abdomen is not clear or disappear, then they should mindful of the sitting postures and 2 points of touching as a basic object. If there's another stronger object rising, they should mindful of the other stronger objects. So in other words, the principle or the guidelines of the practicing mindfulness meditation or the guideline to develop mindfulness is to mindful of the strongest object that's arising at that moment. The object or the phenomenon could be a mental object or physical object. But whenever there are two different objects, one is arising in the mind and the other is in the body, then we should give priority to the object that's arising in the mind. It's because mindfulness is mental training or mental culture or mental development. So meditators should give priority to mental objects and note it as it is. For example, if there's thinking, they note thinking. Be aware of thinking as thinking. They do not have to find out the contents of the thinking. If meditators are interested in the contents, then the thinking will be keep going. So meditators train the mindfulness so that they could perceive thinking as thinking. When thinking disappears, then they come back to body objects again. Body objects could be the movement of abdomens, or the sitting postures, or the touching point. But if there's another stronger object arising, clearer, stronger than this basic object, then they should be mindful of the other object. For example, pain, or let's say when you're practicing at certain places, sometimes you feel very hot, then you note hot, hot, and so on. So in that way, meditators make an effort to develop mindfulness from one movement to next movement, and from one object to next object. The purpose of mindfulness meditation is to attain purification of mind. So just now I mentioned that the purpose of mindfulness meditation is to realize the true nature of mental and physical phenomena through direct experience or personal experience. So only through these personal realizations of the true nature of mental and physical phenomena, then gradually we gain more and more insight, knowledge, and wisdom. So only wisdom has the power to purify the mind. So when meditators gain, for example, one of the stages of supramundane wisdoms, that stage of supramundane wisdoms will uproot the mental defilements. When mental defilements are uprooted, then one attains the ultimate purification of mind. So we can say the ultimate aim of mindfulness meditation is purity of mind, or purification of mind. So it's important because this is because no one can do it for us. No one can purify the mind. The Buddha always say in the Dhammapada, purity or impurity of the mind depends entirely on oneself. And the Buddha also said, Tathagata is when Buddha refers to himself, or he refers to himself as Tathagata, only shows the way. You yourself have to strive. It means you yourself have to strive to develop mindfulness, concentration, and insight, knowledge of wisdoms in order to remove the mental defilements and attain purification of mind, and as well as enlightenment. So it's important that if one rightly understands the teachings of the Buddha, one will put effort to develop mindfulness, because only through the practice of mindfulness one gains the ultimate refuge. No one can give you this refuge. So I hope all meditators have right understanding of the importance of mindfulness meditation. They should put forth effort and practicing mindfulness diligently all the time, everywhere, so that eventually they could uproot the mental defilements and attain ultimate purification of mind.